Traders, how are you? With Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy, co-founder of Speed Up Trader. This week, we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. A lot of interesting news. Water wars has officially started with I'll give you the details here in a second, but between the states of Colorado and Nebraska, we have blackouts now in Germany and Buenos Aires, Argentina. And in addition to that, we have Europe exempting the rich people from the new taxes for climate change. Let's get started. Overall for the week, the most pressing issue was the news from the central bank in the United States, how they're going to start increasing the interest rates, which affects the economy in a negative way, especially the stock market. And in addition to that, how they're going to stop pumping so much money into the economy. Now, a lot of people are still worried what's going to affect what that's going to make in regards to the economy, and that's part of the reason we had such a drastic drop the first week of the year. Overall for the week, the US markets are mostly negative. The Dow went down 0.89%, the S&P 500 went down 0.30%, and the NASDAQ went down 0.28%. Overseas market news, we had the same kind of fears in regards to what's happening for the decision in the central banks, where obviously if they're going to increase interest rates and they're going to stop pumping money into the economy, that means the economy is not going to do as well. That's part of the reason why we had that huge dip in the first week, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video. That also means that we had a huge $1.5 trillion sale in the markets around the world, and most of the big growth stocks and tech stocks have gone down by 10% or so. So if they're going to continue in this direction, which some people say they're not going to be able to, but it's going to grind the economy to a halt that has literally been just injecting that heroin into the economy, right? A lot of people are worried about that, and that's part of the reason why we have a bit of a rocky start to the year. Euro markets for the week, mostly mixed. The emerging economies of Russia and Istanbul, the biggest positive and negatives. Obviously, they're not, let's call them as advanced economies like Europe or the United States, so they move quite a bit. The most advanced economies, we had Switzerland being the biggest loser, 2.17%. Most of the other positives under 1%, 0.7, 0.8, etc. The interesting market news out of Europe is they're passing their new carbon pricing plan, which obviously is a tax on the carbon that you use, obviously to be able to save the environment. And the environment, they're so interested in making sure that they save the environment that yachts are going to be exempted from the carbon plan. So one of the biggest polluters is not going to be included, but obviously you and I have to eat grasshoppers to be able to save the climate. Think about that the next time that they try to tell you that this is so important. Other than that, we had a situation in Latin America and Canada where the markets were mostly higher. Canada being one of the biggest winners at 1.45%. Africa and the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, positive 5.67%. And then in the far, far east in Asia, we have the Hang Seng out of Hong Kong at 3.78% positive. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency news. Monday, we had a big drop under 40,000, which was the first time that we've been there since early August. There was also a report out of blockchain analysis company Chainalysis that North Korean hackers stole $400 million worth of digital assets, being, for example, crypto, in the last 7 attacks in 2021. And this is one of the things that I always told you guys, right? It's not that you can't invest in crypto or you can't make money in crypto. Just make sure that you take the necessary security protocols, because obviously, for example, I invested in this game called Axie Infinity, where you play the game. I'm not playing, but you get people to play the game, you buy the team, and then they pay you in crypto. Well, if you don't have a digital wallet, for example, and those of you guys that listen on the podcast, it looks like a little digital wallet. It looks like a USB, but the crypto is saved in here. The teams and everything are saved in here, so they can't steal it if it's here, because they need it here on the physical wallet with codes and passwords to be able to go ahead and make transfers and things. So just Keep that in mind because obviously being a market that's not regulated, there have been situations in the past out of Canada and even South Korea, advanced first world countries where they literally have lost hundreds of millions of dollars of people invested in crypto due to the fact that a lot of these attacks have been towards investment firms and centralized exchanges. So just keep that in mind. Tether, USDT on Friday also announced that they froze 3 addresses on the Ethereum blockchain containing $160 million worth of USDT upon request of law enforcement. So those of you guys that are saying that they can't touch it because it's decentralized, there's a prime example of, things seem to be getting pretty regulated around here, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to freeze these accounts. And also the banco, I always do the Spanish videos first, so I was thinking Spanish when I did these English videos. But the central bank in the United States also reported that the digital dollar was ready to be launched. And this is kind of what I always thought was the end game. I always thought the blockchain, the technology that crypto uses was the future. And now we have governments coming out with their central currencies, their CBCDs, central bank digital currencies, which I call government coin. Other than that, Bitcoin higher for the week, 3.61%, just under 43,000. Commodities, we had a huge reversal in crude. Obviously, since we have the situation with Omicron, which is not as lethal, more contagious, but not as lethal. A lot of people are saying that it's not going to affect the economy as much, so we're going to see a much better recovery. The U.S. crude went up 6.23% to 83.82, while Brent, which is the international crude, went up by 5.27% to just over $86. Fourth weekly advance for the crude market. Obviously, with the situation that they're not as worried anymore that Omicron is going to shut down everything. Momentum behind the rally with nickel prices is reaching historic highs as well. Nickel being part of the materials that we use for stainless steel in addition to electric batteries, which obviously is the future, right? Prices are at their highest since 2011 at $22,935 per ton on Friday. Stainless steel uses about 2/3 of nickel, about 3 million tons a year, while the demand for electric vehicle batteries are expected to double to about 20% in 2025. The water war has begun. As I told you guys in the beginning of the video, there was an agreement made between Colorado, Nebraska, and if I'm not mistaken, there was one other state in there that doesn't cross my mind at the moment. But basically, there was an agreement made, ages ago, 1911, 1920s. And so the Nebraska governor is announcing a $500 million plan to divert water out of Colorado, which they're saying supposedly they can do because of this agreement that they signed years ago, over 100 years ago. And I thought this was actually interesting because everybody's talking about how the future is going to be a water war. And one of the things that some of you guys may not know is that the Bush family, right, the previous President Bush, Senior and Junior, right, H.W. Bush. Anyway, we've had 2 Bush presidents, Senior and Junior. They actually bought property in Paraguay, in the Chaco, and one of the largest aquifers in the world is literally under Paraguay, which I thought was extremely interesting as well. If you don't believe me, just look it up on Google. Precious metals for the week went up 1.17% to 1,819 for gold, while silver went up 2.66, blah, 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 blah. Rewind. Silver went up 2.67% to $23.06. This is obviously weighing down by the treasury yields on the prospect of U.S. interest rate hikes and the stronger dollar. So they didn't go up as much. And another thing about the supply chain crisis, which is being caused or blamed, I should say, on Omicron, the Norway soldiers from the military in Norway are being asked to return their used underwear to have a temporary solution because they can't find new underwear, at least buy new underwear because of all the supply chain issues. I thought that was really interesting. How would you like to wear used underwear? Financial and banking news. Explosion of the corona cases worldwide is threatening to dampen the consumer spending. Remember that when we think about an economy and how good or bad things are, consumer spending is one of the most important numbers out there. In the United States, it's almost 70% for the US economy. And most other advanced or industrial economies, it's more than 50%. So we're talking about literally the entire world, except for example, the majority of Africa and also a lot of Asia. And so we have a situation where now there's a lot of fear because of the increasing interest rates and a lot of central banks stopping the help that they're giving a lot of the economies, for example, the bond buying and the money injections and the stimulus that they're doing. This basically means that if they do go through with it, we're talking about a stock market going down. We're talking about the economy not growing as fast because it's going to be the end of the heroin for the markets. Other than that, Turkish President Erdogan is saying that he is going to try to bring prices down as soon as possible. Annual inflation in Turkey went up by 36% a year, while the lira, which was the currency of Turkey, went down by 44%, one of the most devaluated currencies in the entire world. South Korea Central Bank is raising interest rates as well. If I'm not mistaken, I told you guys last week or 2 weeks ago that the UK is also starting to raise interest rates as well. So we're starting to see a lot of these central banks starting to become worried about the actual inflation, while the consumer price number went up 7% from a year ago, which is the biggest annual increase since 1982. Core CPI, which is the core inflation numbers, which doesn't include energy or food, because obviously you and I don't need to eat or put gas in our cars, right? This is the most relied on number by central banks. Remember, it does include energy or food, went up by 5.4%. Now, if these numbers were actually used with the old formula that they used in 1980s, it would be closer to 15%. Because they changed the numbers in the 1990s to make it, more palatable so it wouldn't sound as bad. Now, if you really want to know what the actual inflation rate is, Domino's Pizza, the huge multinational pizza chain, they're going to start selling the 10 wings that they normally sell, the chicken wings at $7.99. They're going to start selling them for $8 for $7.99. So instead of 10 for $7.99, it's going to be 8 for $7.99, which implies a 25% inflation rate, which is what you and I talked about at the beginning of the last year, right? Between 20 to 30% or so. This year is going to be a lot worse than last year due to the fact that everybody was listening to the central bank saying that it was going to be temporary. Now that they're saying that it's not temporary, well, now they're going to start really increasing prices. Political news, the U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday blocked the Biden administration's vax or test mandate for the employers above 100 employees, for the large employers, but they did uphold the mandate for health providers. In economic news, the Eurozone unemployment fell to 7.2% in November from 7.3% in October, and Goldman Sachs is predicting that due to the government policy between the United States and Europe, the 19-nation Eurozone is going to grow at a faster pace than the United States. And supposedly the US is supposed to have less regulation. It's supposed to have better recovery and a better economy than the overall Eurozone. So it's kind of a coming of the times. Commerce Department on Friday saying that the retail sales plunged by 1.9% after increasing 0.2% in November. They're blaming it again on the Deltacron, Omicron, Michael Jordan-cron variant of the virus. Shortage of goods because of the bottlenecks in the supply chains. In corporate news, we have the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company reporting Q4 results. This is one of the most important semiconductor companies in the world. And this is part of the reason why we have exploding prices for new cars and used cars, for example, because these chips are hard to find. They recorded a 16.4% rise in profit and over a 4% rise in revenue. And the other semiconductor company out of the Netherlands also increased by 10.37% their share price due to the fact that obviously the demand for a lot of these semiconductors are continuing to explode. Trade news overall in 2021, Chinese exports grew by 29.9%. when they only grew 3.6% in 2020, and their imports also exploded to 30.1% in 2021, while dropping 1.1% in 2020. So the big numbers are from this past year, 2021, and their surplus exploded to $676 billion in 2021. In other words, the Biden administration is amazing for China. In technology, AT&T led bidders 5G spectrum. They won $9 billion worth of band spectrum for the 5G launch in the United States. And investment news, one of the most catastrophic years of over $145 billion in damages due to all the natural disasters that we've had around the world. Thousands of wildfires across the West Coast. We've had the freezing temperatures and hailstorms in Texas and tornadoes in the Southeast, and the tropical storms hitting the East Coast as well. I think this is only going to start escalating. I think it's going to actually get worse. So make sure you prepare yourself. The preppers were right. And in other news, Theranos, the company founded by Elizabeth Holmes, has been convicted of fraud charges and placed on a $500,000 bond. They're going to be sentenced on September 12th. And then DirecTV and Dish Network, their shares have gone up due to the fact that they're talking once again about a merger, because who pays for cable and satellite internet anymore? Like, just watch it online. Pay $10 a month to Netflix and Disney Plus and you're set. BlackRock, the largest hedge fund in the world, exploding numbers for them as well. If there was any reason why you thought that they're not going to stop the pandemic and all the closures and everything, you can see that all of these big companies are posting record numbers in terms of revenue and profit. Meanwhile, you and I are not doing as great. But obviously, we do what's best for the big corporations in this country. Adjusted profit went up by 2.5% to $1.6 billion. Their assets under management went up from $8.6 trillion to $10.01 trillion, and their revenue rose nearly 14% in quarter four. International events, we've had blackouts. 90,000 households in the east of Berlin did not have heating or warm water when the outside temperatures were at 37.4 degrees or 3 degrees Celsius. There was a Klingenberg thermal power station that had to close down for a period of time. And also Buenos Aires, they're suffering from 40 degrees Celsius weather, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and literally half of the city didn't have power. Can you imagine? In 104 degree weather. Other than that, unusual facts this week, there was a large treasure trove of Roman coins that were found in a cave in northern Spain. There was a badger that had to dig a little bit deeper for food due to all the snow. And they found these coins that were from the Roman Empire in the 3rd and 5th century AD, and the coins were actually forged from Constantinople and also Thessaloniki from the Roman Empire. And Australia equaled the hottest day on record after a remote coastal town reached temperatures of 50.7 degrees Celsius or 123 degrees Fahrenheit. Onslow in West Australia matched the record set in 1962. So we're not getting warmer because it was the same temperature in 1962. I'll just leave it there. See you next week.